Hey, you're listening to the Sub Club Podcast, a show dedicated to the best practices for building and growing subscription app businesses. We'll share insider secrets from the top subscription apps on the app stores. Let's get into the show.
Hello, I'm your host, David Bernard, and with me as always, Jacob Eiding, Revenue Cat CEO. Our guest today is Matt Rouif, co-founder and CEO at PhotoRoom, the app for removing backgrounds and creating studio quality photos right from your phone. On the podcast, we talk with Matt about how his time at GoPro led to founding PhotoRoom, how churn can actually be an asset, and how being locked in Apple's basement led to one of PhotoRoom's biggest marketing wins. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. How you doing?
Great. Hey, David. Hey, Jacob.
Hi. It's nice to finally meet internet virtual face to face. We've known each other for a little while, but yeah, you've been one of these people I've become fortunate to know, kind of through Revenue Cat, but not actually know. So it's nice to finally put a face to the name. I was looking back through my email, and I think the first I ever heard from you was through our mutual Francisco, if I said that correctly.
Yeah, Francisco.
Who shared me a blog post that I had seen that you wrote where you talked about Revenue Cat as part of your stack. And then, since then, I think we talked as you were thinking about going into YC. And then after YC, I put in a little bit of money. So this was a good opportunity to check in on my investment. But yeah, I'm super excited to dive in because there's a lot of questions. Like I kind of have followed you guys. I've kind of seen some of the stuff you've been doing, but I don't know like the behind the scenes decision making processes and and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to hear the story firsthand.
Yeah, but before we get into PhotoRoom, you've got quite a history in app development. So I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning and talk war stories. A lot of people weren't in the industry way back when. Jacob and I both started really early as well. So you got your start during the Stanford class, and you were actually a teaching assistant at Stanford at the time, right? I'm kind of stealing your story, but yeah, tell me how you got into app development.
Yeah, definitely. I was a teaching assistant in physics. I was doing a master in physics at Stanford right at the moment of the first iPhone class. And I actually went to Stanford because I was fascinated by the entrepreneurship and I had this business idea of printing photos and sending them, and that seemed a lot easier not to buy a hardware but just use the iPhone that just started at that point. So I was at Stanford. There was the iPhone class. I wanted to do a photo app. So see, 12 years later.
12-year overnight success, you know?
Yeah, that's what they say. Exactly. And I got started programming. I was doing physics before with this iPhone class. I didn't know anything about programming before. So I took a class with a friend that went to basic, and I just wanted to push product and app, and iPhone development was the best at that point. So that was how it gets started. And actually, the photo app became something else. The first company I started back still at grad school, and it became like a ski resort app that I shipped. We had all the major ski resort, speed and the shops that you have, and it was it was a great. I did that for 2 years, and we had major ski resorts, and I started other apps company after that. One called HeyCrowd around a social network. So we had a kind of surveys that you could answer to with polls, a bit like Instagram stories now. And that didn't work so well compared to the ski resort. But I got into iPhone apps right since the beginning.
I remember
That's
the
awesome.
Stanford course. It was on iTunes U, right? That was mass disseminated, or was it the later one?
Yeah, exactly. No, it was the one. It was on Stanford U. There was the guy from Flipboard doing the class.
Yep.
I don't know if he was doing that, and the music app. What's the name again?
Was it Smule,
we could
maybe?
Yeah, Smule was
yeah.
giving one of the class.
Yeah, I remember it being the moment when we were I remember being oh, this is gonna go mainstream, right? Because up to that point, you had to learn iOS by doing basically Mac OS, right? That was like the one point. There was the big Nerd Ranch book. You learned Mac OS, and then the SDKs came, and you like tried to learn quickly like what worked and what didn't. But if you were like me, who came from no programming or not no programming, but no Mac programming, right? There was really no like iPhone entry into it. And then I remember the Stanford course came out. It was like 1 year too late for me because like at that point I heard he'd done a lot of stuff, but it was still really great. I still watched the whole thing. I remember watching it. But that's interesting. We have the same path. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but I studied physics in undergrad as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't go to Stanford because I didn't want to, but I went to a small state school instead just because, but yeah, I get kind of similar story where like I wasn't in grad school, but I was physics undergrad. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I really loved physics and the math and all that stuff. But like, there's a stronger economic pool, let's put it that way, to work on apps. And that was the same story for me. Like took a little bit of what I had learned writing code for experiments and things like this, and then kind of started making apps. And then, the rest was history.
Yeah. I think one of the attraction to physics is like how fast it applies to the real world, from science to real world. And you don't find that in like a physics job, where you kind of find that back in like software development, where you like resolve a math problem or computer science problem and you can directly apply it to real users.
Yeah. Or like even with business modeling and stuff too, you think about how a business moves and like what number moves this number, and there's no physics there. You're not approximating a physical system, but some of the same principles apply, right? You're like trying to find some laws that are underlying it and work from there. So yeah, I found it hasn't been terribly unrelevant, but yeah, that's interesting. What else do we have in common? Let's keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Well, actually, I want to jump in. I want to get to PhotoRoom. So we're actually going to skip over there. You've done a lot now. So after that, you went to Replay, and Replay was like on stage at a keynote, and the co-founders that you were working with, as you joked before we started recording, spent a month in the basement at Apple, as everyone does before a keynote. But then you ended up at GoPro working on imaging. So just tell me about that, leaving GoPro. I mean, great company, done a lot of innovative stuff. But tell me about leaving to start a PhotoRoom and what the inspiration. I guess we've heard part of it. 12 years of working on imaging and wanting to build a photo app. But yeah, tell me about the founding of PhotoRoom.
Yeah, so GoPro is like an amazing company, but it's more marketing and hardware. And I really wanted to. I grew a bit frustrated about like how we could do better software, and a few frustration from that. I was product manager by them, so I was like frustrated with the design tool like Photoshop, and you kind of have to move to. By that time, you had to move to California to move the stuff, and I was based in Paris, and decided to stay there with the family, and kind of we had an amazing machine learning team at GoPro in Paris, but it's really difficult to change the paradigm of kind of a software, like if it works from a kind of more deterministic way. So I kind of realized that it's really tough to ship a new software with new paradigm and with machine learning inside. So I thought there was a big opportunity with, the new hardware coming on the iPhone for machine learning, this new kind of way of thinking about software. And I left GoPro to start a company and with these ideas in mind. And I also at that time realized that there was a lot of apps, after 10 years on the App Store, you kind of know the tricks of the App Store. And I knew there were a lot of apps in the top of the photo apps that were around eraser and background eraser. I realized like, okay, if they're just kind of, I say scam, but it's not really scam, but all these apps that are built quickly, there must be some demand around it. And so that's how I started with the background remover idea. Like I saw that there was a machine learning team at GoPro, that there was some background removal paper and all that. And okay, there must be some demand. Let's ship something quickly and see how it goes. And that's kind of the nice thing of like 10 years of app development. The right tool to go fast, and just shipped a prototype in 2 weeks. With RevenueCat. By then, I have a blog post on like the 10 tools I use there, it went super fast to the store, and with some machine learning and on-device machine learning by then. So it was, and it kind of caught up. Like you try a dozen ideas, and some kind of stay on the wall, and some like don't, and this stayed on the wall.
So at the time, it was called BG app, background app, right? Was the focus initially, did you have like a big scope for it, or was that your entry? You were like, hey, I know that there's these photo apps that kind of suck that are doing this background thing. I think we can do it better. And like, let's see where it goes from there. Or did you have like bigger plans or longer term aspirations?
I think there was an understanding that people kind of needed that, and the tech was 10x better, as they say. So it was really interesting. But we didn't have the full plan for that. Like it's really a few months in that we understood with Elliot the kind of the market fit, and we understood also like this idea of we call that like we translate pixels into concept that makes it much easier to edit. So PhotoRoom is the best photo editor for entrepreneurs. And the idea is that instead of using mask and layers and pixels, you just like the machine learning understand what are the pixels, and they just tell you, okay, it's a cat. So we call a cat. You tap on the cat, and you should have actions that are relevant to a cat, like changing the fur color. If it's a piece of clothing, it should be the texture of the clothing. If it's a kind of graphics, change the color. Kind of it makes it much more accessible than what exists, like a 10 years of 20 years software that exists for photo editing.
So yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like a very much a pitch and a story that somebody would be taught at Y Combinator. So I'm curious, like, I'm curious, like, how did that evolve? Like, so you guys launched the app, and I remember us talking in like the spring of 2019.
Yeah, like May 2019, exactly.
And then you started YC in the fall or in the winter, I guess.
No, So we started YC in the following summer. We were supposed to do the winter batch after that, so 7 months later, and we couldn't because of visa issues. I had some with the family. I couldn't move to
well,
to YC.
What I tell you, there's one way to solve that problem: a global pandemic.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. So how did it evolve? I think we shipped super fast with Elliot, my co-founder, who is like a machine learning genius. And we follow early on the YC, the startup school, which is kind of the first step to YC. And so what does it help you? It kind of you measure the progress. So how much customer are you talking to? How much money you made, and how happy you are doing what you do. And so that was kind of how we iterated for
you were doing that during startup school, or
that startup school kind of asks you every week this question, and you make sure you make progress on that. And I think these are the right questions to make progress in the business. And it was kind of natural like 3 months later. So we started in May June on that application for YC were probably in September. So we did like all summer, we did the startup school scheme and framework and made some progress on that. And we got the YC application in September, and the interviews actually in Paris in I think November.
And then had you, I guess, like your aspirations or your reasons for applying, I guess, are in some way self-evident to somebody who's, obviously you don't need to convince me, but for the listeners, like, what was your what were your motivations? Like, why did you? Well, I guess for one, there's I don't know. I always hear there's a couple of reasons, right? Like, sometimes it's prestige, like people want the prestige of YC. Sometimes it's the help, which I honestly think is the best reason, because it was honestly really good for us. But then there's also like, it's a great way to springboard a venture-backed thing, right, as well. So like, did you have like strong reasons? Was it all of the above, or what was the motivation for getting on the venture roller coaster?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think number one reason was ambition. I think like a lot of European startups, it's changing, but are not can be not ambitious enough. And I think if you're ambitious, like YC is really a way of taking the ambitious path, like how to make a business and a product that has a strong impact, like on a very large number of people. So that would be my number one reason. I think then it's kind of the learning. We're at the beginning of the company, we sit with Elliot, and what kind of is the most important, for the culture. We talked about it also. And one thing we really value is learning fast. And I think YC kind of helps you leapfrog a lot of, like, you learn so much faster because you have the right contact. So it's from the partners. Like every time we have a office hour, almost every time, like we are blown away there is like also help us like get the right investors. On the revenue, on like mobile subscription, like you, like Olga from Blinkist, like someone from John from Spotify. So that's really helpful. And also extra connection, like we have in AI, we have the VP of AI, Yann Lequin of Facebook, and I don't think we could reach this network without YC.
Yeah, the network thing depends on, what your background is. Obviously, you had been in the peninsula, but still, it's hard to be really deeply networked, and still, it's hard to like invest in your engineering skills, right? And like your IC skills and invest in a network at the same time, which was kind of my world. Like I had an okay network, but like it wasn't super well networked. So YC was like a big like boost to that, right? You could get intros to people. You could get a little bit of, it's still a who you know game. Silicon Valley is still some in a lot of ways, or the broader concept.
Before we move on, I wanted to talk just a little bit more about the ambition of PhotoRoom, because, and this is something I think would be really relevant to a lot of our listeners who are building apps in the space. And I, as an indie developer for 12, 13 years, feel like I've worked too much with blinders on, not thinking about the bigger opportunity. So like the first app I launched was TripCubby. It was a mileage log tracking app to get reimbursements from taxes or get reimbursed from your company for your mileage. And I treated it like a little tiny indie business, lifestyle business, and everything else. Meanwhile,
Mile IQ
built a huge business.
Probably launched about the same time, right? I would think.
No, they launched much later, actually.
Oh, really?
Which even again, it's like I had a multi-year lead as kind of the app to do that.
Assuming the market was there, like Mile IQ probably came when the market was finally there. But
was starting to
still,
grow. But yeah. But what's so cool is that I think there's so many opportunities in the App Store that people overlook that seem really niche. Like you just started out replacing backgrounds in photos.
And now you're going to be the next generation Photoshop. Is that a good one? Is that a good pitch? I don't know what the official pitch is.
That's a good one.
Yeah. What's the ambition that took you from, okay, we can replace background images to could be a huge business because we're unbundling one of the like key parts of Photoshop, which is a massive business. So what was the ambition, and what is the ambition that you feel that this can be such a big business?
Yeah. How did you convince yourself of the ability to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
I think it's, first, like working on video editor, like I realized that, video is big. Like I think with Freeplay, then named Quick by GoPro, we got to 100 million downloads. It's kind of tell you like, and most people, they were still using like photo collage. So everyone's working on photo, and video is too complex for most people. So like if you get 100 million for a video, then it's probably like any good like product improvement, like 10x product improvement on photo must get like 1 billion users. And I think it's like that's one of the YC motto, but it was really starting from a pain point of myself, like creating the assets for the App Store. Like you have to create a PSD, and I was like, you spend so much time on non-creative tasks, and I was like, I want to make that much simpler. And I think the big aha moment was kind of talking to the user. So and also like talking to people, like we kind of build in the open, and people told us like, it's like actually it's like programming. Like you, instead of you're doing like object oriented editing, like you understand what kind of object you have, and you make action that are relevant to that. And that's kind of blown myself away. Like it's much simpler. Like you have an object, and you offer to the user what's logic for this object. And it's Photoshop is such a pain to learn. Like I think everyone remembers kind of the blown away part of Photoshop, but also the pain it is to understand.
And it hasn't gotten easier in 20 years. Like now you can paint on a sphere or something. Like there's nothing like new. I still open it, and it's comforting because I learned in CS2 or whatever, and it's all still the same. But like, I don't think it's necessarily like, I think there's even a broader narrative. See, I'm going to make your $10 billion company a $1 trillion company, but I think there's an even broader narrative there around just like the future of software and how machine learning further like narrows the gap between like in software, like programming, not in the traditional sense, but like telling a computer what to do, and the computer asking us or like bringing us like the things it can do. And you see this in like varying degrees of it working well, right? Like like Gmail, like suggesting like absolutely insane sounding replies that I would never say. Like that's kind of that, but I think that's maybe a little bit too far. But I think what you guys are doing is really great. Like segmenting photos, like giving people those tools, like taking, especially for a tool like email, it's like writing. Like I don't need an AI assistant to like say thanks. Like I got that. Thank you, computer. But for like fiddly stuff, like cutting backgrounds out and like setting up, just building like things that to a human, because we're so visual in the way we think, seem really basic, right? Like I want the cat in front of a blue background, right? Like that seems like just tell the computer and it can do that. Right now with the existing tooling, it's like very manual and very skills driven, and you guys are bridging that gap. So like, yeah, who knows? I don't know. Maybe photos aren't the end of it for you guys. Maybe next you just start tackling the next software domain, right? I don't know. Then we'll get to 10 billion first, and then we'll worry about the $1 trillion.
And that's one really magical thing about your app and your onboarding that I wanted to ask you about. So exactly what Jacob was saying, when I think of removing a background, and I've worked in Photoshop literally since the 90s, late 90s, I'm old. But I've tried that like 100 different times. And even in the most modern Photoshop, I don't even know how to do it. I expect it to be a chore. I downloaded PhotoRoom, and in like 3 taps, your onboarding is magical because you don't get in the way of the person having a desire to get something done and then seeing it happen. So in like 3 taps from opening the app, I see a background removed, and it was just like instant, like mind-blowing experience.
It's a really good onboarding
of this thing that like I know is so hard, and I think of needing professional tools and needing to be a professional to even figure it out. It just happens magically after 3 or 4 taps in your app. Like, was that? I assume that was very intentional. Did you have different onboardings before and kind of iterate to that point, or what led you to just such a focused get the person to that moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we did a lot of user interview. I think we like especially in the beginning, every week we would go to McDonald's and pay a meal to student or anyone. And, like the tagline for McDonald's in France is everyone can come in and come as you are. So we really met like tourists, students, professionals. And like doing user interview, we got so frustrated, I think, that people didn't get to the step of removing background. That we kind of like
so you would give them an unlogged out, like a brand new device, and like watch them go through onboarding?
We would like pay the meal in exchange for downloading the app. We would like first ask 3-4 questions about their photo usage on their phone, and then kind of ask them to download the app and blindly test the app. And we were like kind of sneaking. We were just iOS at the beginning, so trying to find people with iPhones and not Android. That was tough. But people usually stop before and they don't understand something, and like to build trust with them, we figure out like the best is to show our tech. So how can we get to the point where we actually like have all these people that try the app that actually see the magic effect of PhotoRoom, and taking a white sheet of paper with Elliot microphone and like thinking how can we do that, and it got to like having that as early as possible in the onboarding. I think that's what happened.
I think I remember now reading about the McDonald's testing in your YC application and being like, yeah, that's the moment I knew these guys were going to make it. It's brilliant, right? Like, I don't know how much user testing, like real good user testing is if you do it in some sort of like professional context. It's probably really weird and like expensive and like hard. And this is dead simple, super scrappy. And like people don't do it because I don't know, nerds don't like talking to people. Like we don't like, it's tough to put your app in front of somebody and see them not. It's one thing to read like bad retention numbers on Amplitude. It's another thing to like see somebody actually churn and like, but honestly, that's the best way to learn. Like it's the best way to like get really actionable feedback. So I'm sure that was super beneficial.
Yeah, it's a trick from Zenly, so the social network on maps, like that really is one of the best app in Paris, and we apply that, and it requires some. It's not easy, I must say, but you learn so much. And the pain today is more like we have more qualified users, so it's really easy in the beginning when you're in the photo apps and people just test the app, and everyone has photos, so it's easy to explain. Then you want to like talk to your kind of retained user. It's much difficult to get them at the McDonald's, but now we're friends with all vintage shops around the block. So in Paris, so we're good.
so that was kind of my question I wanted to ask, and I'll just slide it in now. But like, I've noticed, I don't know if you had this intention initially, but it seems like you found a niche even amongst these apps in something I would say commerce or even e-commerce. It seems like a lot of people use your app to take photos of objects to use as like advertising or go on Shopify. Is that true in statement, or am I just like misreading investor updates?
No, it's totally true. And actually, it's not. I mean, the interesting thing is it came from a personal lead, like using, as you say, Photoshop, and wanted it much easier for me. But I wasn't clear who was using these erased background apps. And talking to like user at McDonald's, we realized like there was all these reselling apps, especially in Europe and the US, where people. They just like they sell in Poshmark on Vinted in Europe, and there is no app that's focusing on their photo need. Like everyone's doing like selfies or I don't know, whatever lens on video you can make, but no one's in helping them. And it actually came from the user interview, like, some user told us like, oh, my girlfriend would love that. She's selling on Depop, and we kind of like after multiple user asking us in support. Asking us, talking at the user interview at McDonald's, we realized that, that's the niche that's we should kind of focus on. So that's how it came.
What was that pre-YC, like pretty early in the process?
No, that was, it came in a few, just not in one day, but I think early after being taken at YC.
Okay.
Like early 2020.
So then my next question, I guess, is like, how do you decide then? So you have a core strong product you might have like varying, and I think this is very common for a lot of apps and companies, is like you have probably different levels of product market fit depending on the market, right? So like maybe broadly across all users of iPhone, your product market fit may not be as strong, but then when you look at this one niche, like maybe it's really strong. And then I think some founders end up in a situation where you have to kind of decide, like, do I want to go for this maybe less fit, broader market, or maybe a tighter market with a stronger fit that I'm starting out with? Did you have that internal conversation? And then did you make an active decision, like, we're going to focus on this? And then, and then what's the plan after that? Like, or is that the forever plan?
No, it's I think the easy part is, as a product guy, I'm really convinced that our usage is really deep. Like we're starting from a different Lego brick. Like, okay, you don't edit mask or square pixels, you edit like objects. So I mean, any app that kind of want to copy that, it has to stop doing what it does today. So it's kind of the thing that relates to the machine learning understanding pixels in the beginning. So we were confident like digging into this usage and this product paradigm and like product basic block is interesting. And then we decided to focus on the pro usage. And it's difficult as a founder, you want to serve everyone. At the beginning, we were even doing like video plus photo, like in December 2019, we dropped the video just for animation. And then we dropped kind of the casual use case to focus on the pro. And it's been helpful. Like you're not like giving up on the other users. Some of the features, they are still going to use it. The casual, the people doing memes from the app, but you just like, when you build features, you think about them. And around that, I think YC is helpful because they tell you, like, if you reach local maxima from one vertical, like product market fit, then you're investing so much on the tech, it gets better than all the local maximas are adjacent. Like you can reach them after, and it's not a big deal. And kind of believing and trusting that helps you on like, okay, we're going to focus on this one for, let's say, 3 months, and we see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in that I think can trip up people early in the process, is that you think that making an active choice to close yourself off to part of the market is a mistake because you're like, well, I want to serve everybody, or well, I want to have the most broad appeal I can, because it feels wrong, right, to not serve a use case. But often tactically it's a bad choice because in the early days, anything that you have, find any users that love your product, even if it's a small group, it's a closer step to like get your foot onto that than it is to try to get sustainability on like mediocre product market fit across the broad market. Because then also it makes your McDonald's discussions easier. Well, maybe you don't have McDonald's discussions anymore. It makes your product discussions easier because you can say like, okay, these are we're not going to do all this stuff. We're going to focus on this stuff, which gives you more velocity. It's all about like, I just really feel there's so much to getting that velocity early, right? Like getting something that's like moving and growing and getting fast. And I think that's one of the things I mean, I don't know. I won't dox you guys on retention numbers and stuff, but when you have I'll just say that when you have a pro user base that's using it for something non-casual, retention gets easier, right? Like have a reason to come back. And so there's not that many apps like that on it's rare to find mobile apps that have that opportunity, right? So when it's there, you need to take it.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you think about pricing for that value creation, since that kind of pro segment really probably gets a lot more value than you're even currently charging, because they're actually making money with your product? Like, how did you think through your current pricing, and did you iterate to this point from a more kind of consumer pricing to a I mean, to me, it feels like you're in the middle still of somewhat consumer friendly and really honestly probably cheap for a professional use case. So how did you land on your current pricing?
Yeah, to be honest, it's like most of the photo apps. I mean, when we started, maybe it's different. They are like they are at all pricing like $10 a month, and that's kind of given by, I guess, Spotify, Netflix. Like it's kind of the the glass ceiling of the price of the subscription, even for prosumer. And we kind of iterated on the yearly from $40 to $69 in the US. So we didn't we kind of landed on that quite early. You don't want to alienate the user, especially if you put the upsell in the onboarding to be too expensive. I think we have a major opportunity though to address the more advanced business and the more than one person in a shop. It's really difficult to build this B2B case in app. There are not that many apps that use that in the upsell of the phone. So you probably have to show it the first price to every user, and on the pro, you probably can upgrade them after. I think it's something we can do later, like focusing on the product for now and making it simple is much easier. Like if you start with two prices, like the support is going to go crazy. We still do the support of the users. So that's something we try to maximize for simplicity here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point to make, especially too. It depends on your cash flow constraints as well. Just like how extractive you want to be, how much you want to push it, right? Because when you have good retention, like there's an argument to be made to not mess that up because you're raising your price will hurt your retention, right? Like it's kind of at least on paid, right? Like more expensive it is, just people are going to churn more. And if you're compounding your total like paying subscribers, that might be more important than extracting an incremental $2 or $10 or whatever from each user, right? It might be better off just to keep them happy and long term. And that's what makes it, I don't know, pricing just so complicated. It's about finding that equilibrium to maximize like the long-term area under the curve and not just like the individual LTVs.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was one. Yeah, you want to talk like you don't want to be expensive at the beginning. If you're too expensive, like one of the really source of feedback was also our support, and like if you're too expensive, you get less pro. And the goal, I mean, the reason we launched after 2 weeks with Revenue Cat was like the feedback from pros is so much more valuable than the feedback from free users. And I mean, you still want people to pay. Like you start at $100 a month, it's going to be like there's no way people are going to pay for that. So I was actually talking on Twitter with that. Like we actually put forth first the monthly plan because we wanted people to churn and be able to talk to them. So there was really a focus on learning from the pros.
Interesting.
In the early days.
Yeah,
That's really smart.
Yeah, the short, I think long the annual subscriptions obviously have a bunch of benefits to app developers, but you do end up flying blind for a very long time, right? Until you really know what those numbers look like. So if you're on monthly purely, it does kind of simplify things early on, which is another case to be made for just not overthinking your pricing like initially, right? Like you guys launched just with the monthly and it was fine. And you added, I don't know when you added an annual product, but you brought it in when the time was right.
I think the logic also learning from like GoPro and replay days is the pricing is quite elastic. So you double your price, you divide by 2 the number of pros, like minus plus 10%. And so it doesn't, I mean, when you get bigger, it's worth doing experiments on pricing, but in the early days, it's not worth like taking too much time on that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to know if you have an elastic curve, it means you're pretty close to the optimum already, right? So
did you start from day one at that $10 a month price point?
I think we were at 8 or 9. That's pretty much like every pro photo pro apps, not selfies, was at that on the photo, and it's I think I mean, it comes from Spotify and Netflix. Like everyone's like, it's like if comparing in the support, they tell you comparing you to Spotify or Netflix anyway. So it's, I think it's a good like a way to start. And as they increase the price, they increase kind of the TAM of all the, I mean, the possible LTV of all the apps, which is really good. Thank you.
If they don't take care of it, inflation will. Don't worry.
But that's just amazing. 2 weeks to an MVP that you could charge $8 a month for, and people actually paid it.
Well, 12 years in 2 weeks, David.
Right. No, that's a great point. But the point being that there are still opportunities that when you have experience and domain knowledge, that it's not the programming, it's not such a monumental task to build something that's really valuable to people in this space on mobile.
Yeah,
that you can build something good quickly with that experience.
The first app was really crappy though. Like I think we waited for a few weeks before having our first paid users.
Gotcha. I did want to talk a little bit about your marketing. So what did you do at launch? Did you get a little press? Did you talk to Apple? How did you get that initial cohort?
So we were Apple has been super supportive to us. I think so. Before GoPro acquired Replay. So Replay was app of the year, same year as Elevate. So
were you guys app of the year in France? Is that what the deal was?
No. So I have an account. I put out
we
the
were
screenshot.
App of the year in the US, which
so we didn't. Yeah,
we
didn't get the
else.
US. We didn't get the US and North America, and it's kind of a private territory. But we got like most of the Europe and Asia there. And I was saying like David before the start that Elevate, which are these guys? They're taking all the US, and we should get that.
It was good for you that we hadn't localized, maybe.
Yeah,
that was the thing. We were like only English at the time.
Well, Elevate is such a difficult business to localize, so I think it's like photo video is easy to localize. And so we got the keynote. So and we kind of, the app was really good at marketing through using the latest technology of Apple in like the metal and using the latest GPU. And I kind of built the relationship from there with the Apple team, and also like learning how that's kind of the narrative of Apple, like to showcase apps that are leveraging the latest technology. They do their marketing through developers, and that's awesome for us. Like it's a super opportunity. And so what was that when we started? It was, we're using Core ML to do the background removal. And we did use like really early on in September of 2019, we use our ARKit APIs to remove the background to do some live preview of the photo. And so we got into, there is an accelerator in France, in the biggest, like Station F is one of the biggest accelerator, and Apple has a program there, and we got in there and they helped us on like marketing and business during the summer, and some tech workshop. And in September, we got massive marketing from the using ARKit 3, I think, APIs. So I think our early days was marketing through using the latest tech, software, and hardware from Apple.
And then where did it go from there? Yeah. So after you've gotten some traction and some of those early customers, did you jump into paid user acquisition? And what's your balance of paid to organic growth these days?
Yeah, so we didn't do paid until like we really got traction on market fit, so early 2020, and we started like to have some. We got Gary V tweeting about us, like a video from us, so that was like a viral video demoing the app, and we kind of. The thinking was if some videos of demoing PhotoRoom are viral, it probably works also as ads. So we kind of use these viral videos and try ads on that, and we started ramping up, I think, before YC Facebook ads, so in April of last year. And it kind of, it was a good channel of acquisition for us. And we always had in mind, like, we don't want to spend too much. We wanted to have it under control, but the payback was really good. So we kind of had a mix, like, I don't know, it was 30-70 maybe at that point, and between paid, 30% paid and 70% on organic. And organic. And so that we ramped that up, and I think it was a good time to test marketing, and we kind of fastened that at that point because there was the beginning of the COVID, and all marketing was going down. So it was super cheap to try stuff there. Yeah. So try to be opportunistic on that. an influencer at like a lot of time. So like all of that, we were at the right time and at the right moment for that, I guess.
So how much like are you balancing? I mean, obviously there's always so much you're balancing as a founder. But how much are you thinking about investing back in the app and like broadening your appeal, making it better, new markets, like new platforms versus like the scale it approach? Like how can we scale marketing and continue to grow? Or is it like 50-50? Like, do you have a top priority right now, or how is how is your mind thinking about like your biggest growth levers?
Yeah, we try to have a higher level kind of priority. So let's focus on retention, or let's focus on this specific kind of user. So in the US for this 3 months, and we try to align product and growth on like for 3 months of that. And so that's kind of that's how we think about it with Elliot, and try to have it on growth and on product, and kind of put us to talk more to this kind of users, so to improve on for this kind of user, this niche, for instance. And I don't know, people selling on this marketplace for a month, and then we'll see maybe another niche and another country, but still improve the experience for everyone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And are you thinking about marketing in terms of like specific people selling on specifics, like marketplaces, like you're actually going like channel by channel that closely? And does that inform like features, or does that inform creative, or how does that feed back into your process?
Yeah, we're getting into that. Like we try to understand better by persona and use case, what's the LTV and what the retention is. And I think we're at the scale where we start to do that. But before it was like a general creative for everyone, and kind of demo the value of the app. And we were super lucky that our creative were working for that. And I think like now, like the way marketing works, it's like Facebook or Google are doing most of the optimization, and you're more into like how can I adapt my creative so that it fit the focus I want to do for, I don't know, for the US. So I'll be make sure you're in English, or make sure if you're like looking at multiple countries, try not to be too localized. I think there is a Netflix called that neutralize, or they have a specific wording on making the artwork or the creative not too localized, not too English, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
like to use content that's good for everyone. So it's kind of that dictate kind of what we try to do with growth and marketing.
That's great. Well, I have a million more questions, but we do need to wrap up. We're going to put links into the show notes to find you on Twitter and LinkedIn, and PhotoRoom is such a great name, easy to Google, easy to find on the App Store. But you're also hiring. What positions do you have open? You want to make a quick pitch to our
the audience,
lovely listeners?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're hiring a lot. We're hiring on growth and paid acquisition. We're hiring a project designer, iOS developer, Android developer. And the way we think about the team is really to have we are 10 and we have a strong impact to millions of users. So really leverage like a small team, high impact. And I think it's possible because of apps. So we're looking for really senior people for that, and mostly in Europe. So we have like a 2-3 days a month in the Paris HQ, but you can work from anywhere in Europe time zone.
Yeah, and I'll second that. I think working on this product would be really interesting, purely based on my insider knowledge as an investor and your friend. But for real, I mean, a lot of apps don't get to this point. You've got a lot of tailwinds, and I think actually the upsides go far beyond the app store, right? And the future is very, very, very big, and you guys are ambitious. So take these jobs. Thank you.
Yeah, we're like thinking be everywhere, start for mobile, but we're we're mobile first, not mobile only. And we have the web tool that we launched last week. We have an API for any developer that want to remove the background with PhotoRoom attribution, and we already have the Mojo folks using it. So it's really, I think, we want to be close to the entrepreneurs, like doing photos, and we want to like communicate do pro images that sell. And so sometimes it's not an app, it's just a PhotoRoom button, and so you can use the API for that. And so yeah,
it's pretty great when you have a good product market fit. It just gets really fun.
Yeah, and we have that kind of, now that we have money, we kind of we have like super smart people in the machine learning team, so we have the best tech on market to do that, and that's super exciting. Like we're shipping like new machine learning next week, and it's going to be awesome. Like I can't wait to see the result on the analytics.
That's amazing. And 10 people. I thought you were bigger already. I guess you want to be. You want to be 15 or 20 with all the postings you have.
That's why I'm really bullish on this market, David. A small team can do a lot of stuff in this space. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is crazy. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was great chatting, and thanks for sharing your insights, Matt.
Yeah, we'll have to catch up again in 2 years. See how it's going.
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. Thank you, guys.
To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.